we doing? Sec. There we go. Perfect. Making sure that everything is seen on all platforms and that everybody can see without any issues. Let's go. Okay. Perfect. Let's see. Okay, here. Everything seems to be doing fine. Everything seems to be doing fine in all places. Let's go. Okay. So, how you guys doing? We're gonna be covering a good amount of news. Sans, I think you're already getting ahead of me. What are you, pre-watch? Like, what are you doing? Don't spoil the news. Oh, you like the Blatcher music in the background? Yeah, I thought it'd be nice to have something different than the Portal radio music going on. So, but yeah, how you doing? Welcome. Making sure everything's still, just making sure everything is good and we're all fine. And so yeah. So I have the presentation. There's a good amount of things going on that went on this week and like at the end of last week too. Right when I have finished last week's recap, stuff just started happening immediately afterwards, which is going to be very interesting for us to talk about. But yeah. Okay. So just give it let's see. I'm just a little bit late, just like 5 minutes late, but we're fine. We're here. We're vibing. All right. So, I just realized you can't really see Skelly in the back today. Let me just move this a little bit. Look at Skelly over there. He's saying hi. Look at him over there. I assume that's why you've gotten insomnia. Yeah. There's a lot of things that have been happening. And I just got insomnia in general. It just sucks because staying up till late. Oh, is it raining? Yeah, it's raining out. I have a hole in my ceiling, so literally when it starts raining, I just hear the like there's leak in the ceiling. When it starts raining, it just starts falling into a bucket. I don't think you guys can hear it, but if you can, I'm sorry about that. But yeah, no, I've just been busy. I've just been doing stuff. I've been even when I'm not necessarily the one streaming, I'm still participating in other people's stream, which also leads me to be just awake for longer. So yeah. I forgot to say here. Hey, hi Brainrot, and hi Alexandra. How you doing? So welcome. All right. So let's go ahead and start today with today's news. Let me just get ready to pull that up. Make sure it looks good. Let me just move you up here. There you go. All right. So it's really pouring out because that's leaking real quick. All right, but the mic ain't picking up, so we're good. So we're just gonna continue. So, there's a lot of going on right now. The gaming industry is kind of on fire, as it seems that both Roblox, a giant in the indie space, is starting to see some backlash hitting it. We're also seeing another attempt from what was it? Another attempt from Battlefield. Another attempt from Battlefield to try and get some, what would you call, a battle royale working on. So they released REDSEC and stuff like that. We've also seen some new content relating to EA and relating to Microsoft that is not making people very happy. So there's a lot of things, but within all that, there's some good updates that have been coming out. There's some good news, some nice updates for some games that people really enjoy. So overall, that's kind of what we've been seeing. But let's go ahead and look at the news. So once again, we're seeing a lot of things. REDSEC just got released. We see that Roblox is kind of having some issues, and there even is some YouTube policy updates that we're going to be talking about that may affect how people game, and mostly how people make content regarding gaming. So we're going to start off with first talking about REDSEC. So REDSEC just got released, and it was a release that came. This is like the second time that Battlefield tries to do a battle royale mode. The first time that it tried to do a battle royale mode, it was with Battlefield 5, and the problem was that it was just an extra game mode, and you had to buy the game. You had to pay the full $60 price just to have this extra game mode, which they corrected. And with REDSEC, it's a free game that you can get, and you don't need to have bought Battlefield 6 in order to be able to play REDSEC, which is great for people who don't really want to play or pay for the main game and just want to try out this new Battle Royale format. Now, with the release of REDSEC, Call of Duty seemed to have been getting very, I guess, scared. They seem to have been feeling threatened by the potential success that the Battle Royale Battlefield would have. So they immediately, around the same time as REDSEC got released, they preemptively said, hey guys, look at us, Black Ops 6 is out. Black Ops 6 well, it's not out, but hey, we have we have a try it out. You can test this game. It's free starting today, around the same time that the Battlefield stuff is going on. No, don't look at the Battlefield stuff. Look at us. You can try out the new Zombies game mode, and you can try out the new multiplayer of Battlefield 6 right now. Please check our game. Focus on our game. We want it to be successful. So they immediately, on launch of the Battle Royale, started having it a free trial for everybody to try out the new Battlefield 6 game that will be coming out now in November. So clearly seemed like they were being a little bit desperate to get all that attention for themselves. But maybe that wasn't necessary. I mean, maybe Battlefield Battle Royale wasn't as big as a threat as they might have originally thought. Because looking at Battlefield Royale, Battlefield Royale, that's actually a pretty nice name. Looking at the Battle Royale Battlefield REDSEC, we can see that on launch, it hasn't been doing as good as people anticipated. So basically, when it launched, we saw that it reached a peak of 555 concurrent players, when its average for the game is roughly 320 to 4,000 concurrent players. So that means that it only really introduced 100,000 players, like new players, into the mix, which is, worrying, considering they wanted the same type of success that Warzone got, where Warzone is its own kind of entity right now and people really love playing it. So they didn't see as much success. Granted, it did come out kind of in the middle of the week, so we might see these numbers go up as we reach the weekend. As you know, kids are already back in school, and thus they usually find time to play these games and really dedicate themselves to playing these type of games once they reach back to their house and they're free for the weekend. So we can definitely expect that to be the case. It is, however, Halloween weekend, so we might not see it really take effect now, like tomorrow, but we might see it go up a little bit on Saturday and Sunday. Regardless, this is not the metrics that they were expecting to get. So much so that they haven't even reached their overall peak when the game originally launched, right? So the all-time peak when the game launched was 750-ish K concurrent players, and the new release of REDSEC did not even bring that many people into it. So it's something that they, although they did tease a lot that they were doing on Battlefield, I feel like REDSEC wasn't marketed that well. I feel like it was more of a supposed surprise drop than them being shouting out to the world that, hey, we have a battle royale game coming up. So some people did get surprised with the release of REDSEC. So maybe if as more traction comes around, more people get notice that this is has been released, maybe more people will see it. It also doesn't help that they kind of marketed it as a different game, saying that it's Battlefield REDSEC instead of like Battlefield 6 and Battle Royale, whatever version, which I think is a good idea long term, meaning that they could keep working on REDSEC without having to worry about any other Battlefield games in the future, similar to how Call of Duty does it with Warzone. But I do feel like not marketing it as much definitely hindered their initial performance with REDSEC's release. So much so that there's been a lot of like mixed reviews with REDSEC. Now, I will point out though that these mixed reviews are kind of muddy, right? What do I mean by that? Well, the reality is that after looking into all the negative reviews that people were having, most, if not all, reviews kind of revolve around REDSEC being adjacent to Battlefield 6, even though it has its own, I guess, launcher. It's being adjacent because there are missions in Battlefield 6 that force you to play Battlefield REDSEC, which a lot of people are not happy about, because a lot of people are saying, hey, if I wanted to play REDSEC, I would have done that. Why are you forcing me to play your new Battle Royale game when I want to play the base game? So I know there is a refresh button, like so that you can get new missions that maybe doesn't involve REDSEC, but that doesn't change the fact that it is random and you could still be stuck with REDSEC missions. And it just, they should have made REDSEC its own missions, its own segment, its own thing, and just left Battlefield 6 as it was. But due to this being kind of integrated right now together, a lot of the negative reviews are just Battlefield 6 fans that don't really want to play their Battle Royale version. But they're not really negative reviews to the game itself. The only, I would say, like, common criticism that I saw for the new Battle Royale mode was the fact that there is no solo queue. So you have to have a friend group in order to be able to queue up to find a match. And that is a valid criticism. And that's something that I feel like they could easily fix and add solo queue into it. But a large portion of these negative reviews are just people complaining that they have to play the Battle Royale mode when they just want to play the base game. So, but regardless of people who did want to try out the Battle Royale mode seem to be receiving it pretty positively, even though there is some ground to fix and make the game mode better. It seems like people are genuinely enjoying it for what it's worth, right? But regardless, this doesn't make it look good for them. They just launched a new version, a new game mode, and it has more negative reviews than it has positive reviews, and just seeing overall mixed reactions from the public. And that's not good, especially when they're trying to appease EA. Speaking of EA has once again come onto fire with recent developments in public reception. Because as we all know, EA is trying to get its acquired by the Arabian trust fund. I forgot the name again of it. Let me check my notes real quick. It's the I forgot what it was called. I had it written down. I had it written down. I completely forgot. Where is it? Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? The acquisition of... Where are you? Where did I have you written down? I can't believe I completely forgot. I'm gonna have to go ahead and look that up. Just give me a sec while I try to remember the name of it. EA acquired by Saudi Arabian. There we go. So the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund. That's the ones who they were currently working to get acquired, and it seems like EA has been going into motion to actually be acquired. It was kind of in the air if they were actually going to accept it, but it seems like they really do want to go forward and be acquired by the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund. And people are starting to hit back. People are not very happy for this potential acquisition. So much so that especially in the Sims community, it seems like the Sims community and their creators are backing out from the EA content network plan because they believe that if they get acquired by the Saudi Arabian Public Trust Fund, their views are against the values that the community of Sims has fostered. And this is one of many reasons why a lot of creators from the Sims community have just decided to kind of boycott the game to protest them getting acquired by them getting acquired as a whole. And they're not the only ones who are finding and pushing back. They're not the only ones who are pushing back against the Saudi Arabian acquisition, as we are now seeing the communication we're now seeing the communication workers of America also intervening and trying to get the FDA and the FTC to scrutinize that EA buyout, saying that this will, if they get bought out, it'll cause a lot of issues within not just the layoffs and potential job losses that will happen with the acquisition. They also are calling it a security risk to America as a nation, stating that having a major player in the gaming space being acquired by a foreign government is something to be worried about, especially when a lot of EA's games and public that play it are a lot of them are American. So them being acquired by a foreign company is something that they're very, very concerned about. So much so that this is similar to what we saw happen with TikTok, as TikTok was gonna be a banned in the US specifically because it was owned by a foreign company but had a lot of US users. This is the exact same thing that the CWA is currently scrutinizing and calling out about this acquisition, this buyout, saying that this is just a security risk for America as a whole. And they're not saying to maybe cancel it entirely, but they are saying that there should be measures put in place in between the contract of the buyout that would allow the American workers and the American people, consumers like us, to ensure that we are going to be safe and that our data is not just going to be stolen by a foreign company, by a foreign government, and maybe even used against us in the future. So this is something that they're heavily scrutinizing right now. And with that said, this is once again more and more heat that EA is receiving regarding this acquisition. And this is also a terrible time for EA to be receiving so much backlash and so much pushback, especially after they just reported that they had overall lower revenues the last quarter. We're seeing that they had 9% lower revenue, 53% less net income, and overall 13% net bookings, right? So this is clearly a time where this decision has caused EA to lose a lot of its following. Now, that downturn in its profits could also kind of move it the other way. It might incentivize EA to be more likely to accept a buyout because they're thinking, oh, we're losing not just popularity, we're losing money, so we got to get people, we have to like cash out before the company goes under, right? That might be one of the mindsets that the CEO or like higher up leadership on EA, that might be something they're thinking of, and it's something to be considered. Regardless, if they stay in the public market as they already are not the most loved company out there, and they're losing money. So clearly this is kind of a rock in a hard place where you clearly don't have a good option. Like EA right now has to decide whether they're gonna go for the buyout or not, and whether that is actually beneficial for them as a company or not. But we've seen that these type of buyouts have happened before, and sometimes it's just they get the bag and leave, and they don't care if the company goes under. And that's also one of the things that the CWA is fighting against. They're saying like, oh, if they might, higher ups might receive a bunch of money from this buyout, and then they're just gonna let the industry or let the company rot, and this is gonna cause a lot of layoffs and a lot of job losses for the American people. So once again, a lot of reasons of people pushing back against the buyout, and we don't know if that's going to be enough. We have yet to hear anything from, Scott Besson or anybody from the FTC regarding if they're gonna try to either block the buyout or at least review it with more detail. So we're yet to see any details on that regards. Regardless, the EA wasn't the only one with some, I guess, questionable earnings in this month's earnings statement, at the end of this quarter, as we saw that Xbox themselves had a 29% downturn in their hardware sales this last quarter. And this can be attributed to the fact that they've been making a lot of decisions that people are not very happy with, and they have been kind of pushing their whole agenda to be that every game is accessible from any platform, including PlayStation, meaning that a lot of people don't see a need to get the Xbox unless you genuinely like its specs, unless you genuinely like the controller and stuff like that, or its UI. It seems like there's no reason for you to get the Xbox. You could always just get a PC that would probably run all the games that Xbox would run, meaning that a lot of people have been incentivized less to actually buy hardware and their consoles for Xbox themselves. Now, they do state that overall gaming revenue fell by 2%, but that is offset by the 1% growth that the Xbox got for content and services. And by the way, content and services, there's a lot of Microsoft content and a lot of like services that Microsoft provides. But amongst those services, there is also what we know as the Game Pass. The Game Pass counts as one of those services. And what we're seeing is that the Game Pass last quarter, we knew that it was being profitable, but we see that it only saw a 1% growth last quarter. Now, this, you do have to also take into account that although it's a small increase in this quarter by 1%, it was actually seeing a 13% growth in the last, actually I should put that in green. It was actually seeing 13% growth the quarter before that. So this is just a 1% increase to to the already existing 13% increase that we saw before, right? So not at all doing bad. It just seems like their growth is maybe stagnating. Now, this is also sales and money they gained before they made the announcement of, or before they made the change of making Game Pass $30 and increasing it by 50%. So this value might go higher in the next quarter because of Game Pass being just more expensive. Here we see the 30% almost of hardware that dropped, that people weren't buying. And we can also see that the gross gaming revenue did decrease by 2%, mostly because of the hardware not being bought. That's kind of what affected this number in its majority. And that's why we see a loss of roughly $113 million. So an increase of 13.13%. Exactly. It's no, not an 13.13. It's a increase of 14%-ish. It's actually, you're not wrong. The numbers are not exact, because remember, we're not talking of 1% of 13%. We're talking of 1% of what they were making at the time, meaning that they increased 1% of their overall earnings. Meanwhile, last quarter they had increased 13% of their overall, earnings. So this is still really good for them, and we can expect this number to go up higher and higher, especially with the new increases to the pricing in their Rogue Ally and in the Game Pass as a whole. In fact, it'd be very interesting to see how they do next quarter, especially since the Rogue Ally is released. Will the Rogue Ally be enough to increase this number, this percentage? Will they actually get some console sales from the Rogue Ally and gain back some of the money they lost in the last quarter? We don't know. We all know that, as we talked last week, the Rogue Ally is pretty expensive, and thus not many people can really get their hands on it, not at least right now in this economy. But this all is going down, and they've gained some revenue, and this is making some people mad, especially because of the news recently that the Microsoft CEO was gonna receive basically a $100 million pay or salary this year. So why? In what sense are they paying $100 million when they keep doing layoffs and they keep firing people? Well, the reality is that the CEO of Microsoft, in this case, has brought some actual benefits to the company. They've gone 100%. They claim to have a 140% increase in security, 160% increase in products and sales as customers and stakeholders for themselves as well, and a 155% increase in the overall culture of Microsoft. And these are all really good metrics for a CEO of a company. And thus, they want to reward him. And the way he earns those $100 million is not in cash, right? The way that he earns that $100 million is by them giving him stocks that are valued, once you look at it, are valued up to $100 million. So that's how he is getting paid out so much. This also means that if he were to be fired for no reason, he might have a payout of $180 million. But if he decides to retire, he would still almost guarantee $140 million just for him to retire. He could just have that money for himself. So clearly, this is happening, and the issue is that he's receiving so much money when we've been seeing all the layoffs and when we've been seeing all the price cutting and the budget cuts, and we've been seeing the price increases. So whether we should be paying a CEO that much money, that's down to the company. And obviously that's down to work culture as it is right now. That's not my decision to make. I would rather, obviously, that $100 million in stocks that he's receiving be distributed to their employees, especially since because the people who do the work are his employees, not the CEO. But maybe that's a little bit too optimistic and naive of me. And thus, right now, we're just going to continue seeing layoffs. We're going to continue seeing price increases, and that's just going to give more money to stakeholders, and thus more money to stakeholders mean they're happy with the CEO, meaning that they give more money to the CEO. And that's exactly why we're seeing what we're seeing. But we're very unhappy with all the cuts that they've been doing. In fact, they recently, it was announced that Doom, the co-creator of Doom, John Romero, was working on a new IP, a new project with Xbox, and Xbox had pulled their funding when they did budget cuts and layoffs back in July in this summer. So he got lost funding, even though they were working on a new game and they had it pretty well, pretty far ahead in the game. Luckily, this is not, all hope is not lost, especially since they did state that they do own the IP. Microsoft does not own the IP. They own the IP, they own the code, and they own everything about the game. Meaning that they're now trying to find and maybe make contracts with other companies that could maybe fund what's remaining of the game. And if another company were to fund the rest of the game and, acquire the IP from them, they would basically be receiving a free $50 million investment to the game, because Microsoft already invested $50 million worth of progress on this game. So this could be a huge opportunity for a company down the line, especially since John Romero has a pretty high standing name in the industry. So who knows? There's no news of what the IP is, what type of game is, what genre. There's no news of what it is at all. So this could be something that could blow up later on, and we might see it tied to another gaming publisher. So here's hoping that they're actually able to make a contract and get acquired by another publisher in order to promote and eventually release this new game. Hopefully it's pretty good. Now, this has been happening a lot recently, where a lot of the companies have been kind of cutting off the different budgets that they have for different games. So a lot of games are getting pulled out, a lot of games are getting cut, and some people have kind of put it on their own hands to make the games that they want to see, which is why recently there was a release as of today of the Spartan Survivor, which is a fan-made game for Halo, where it's basically combining what is the Halo universe with a Vampire Survivor gameplay, which is honestly pretty cool. This is the type of side games and like that Microsoft could be doing and could be rather successful, because their IP is loved by many. And these are bets that they're not taking, but the industry and developers themselves have decided to jump and do the games themselves of the ones those IPs they love. Obviously, the game is free. You don't have to pay for this game. He would kind of be in legal trouble if he charged you to play a fan-made game of an IP that's not theirs. So you can play this game right now, and if you like Vampire Survivor, this might be an interesting choice for you. Also, speaking of Vampire Survivor, we also have the new update that came out today, where they added some multiplayer in the game, and they also added a more collaboration with the Balatro developers, including 4 new Balatro kind of characters, and basically like rare jokers are now characters in Balatro. And with the new multiplayer that they added, it seems like there's a lot more new free content that they've added that a lot of people are very interested in. So if you like Vampire Survivor, now is the best time to hop back in if you haven't been playing it since previous updates. Now, I'll be right back. I'm going to go to the bathroom real quick. When I'm back, we're going to be talking a little bit about Roblox. So be right back. There you go. I'm back. I'm back. Sorry about that. All right. So, where was I? So, let's see. So that would mean that if those stocks goes up, it could sell those stocks for have billions of dollars. Yes, yes, Sans. That's exactly what it means for uh the CEOs and how they get paid out. They get paid out in stocks, meaning that they can grow or go lower depending on how their company performs, thus making them more incentivized to make profit for the company and then basically becoming richer themselves. So, with that said, uh, where I left off is basically, so Roblox is actually getting a lot of flack recently, with Roblox seeing a bunch of basically Roblox seeing a bunch of bans from a bunch of different countries, right? We've known that a lot of countries have been banning Roblox all in the name of basically their children's safety. So they've been getting a lot of flack recently because they don't consider Roblox to be a safe environment for kids to actually be playing on. And this is just an addition. There's been a new addition to this list of bans, of at least countries they're banned in, with of the addition of Iraq. So now Iraq is also banning Roblox from being able to basically be online and be played in their country. Now, in this list, that we have countries like China, we have Jordan, we have Quebec, we have Guatemala, we have North Korea. China and North Korea are more of political reasons why they don't want to have Roblox in their country, but all others that I mentioned are actually banning it because, once again, they feel they've been recently, a lot of countries have been moving their policies and changing the way they do things and how people interact in the virtual space, especially how kids from their country interact in the virtual space. Now, the fact of the matter is that Roblox, this is not new for them. They've been getting a lot of fire recently of this, and it just continues to ramp up as more and more countries keep banning it. So much so that we have um a couple of different states that have been ensuing some lawsuits. China has exclusive version of Roblox. Yes, so China's not the only one. Vietnam also has Roblox, but it's their own version of Roblox. So basically, Roblox has worked with different countries to have a proxy company in that country that would make an identical game as Roblox, but with whatever specific restrictions that they want to add or that they want to have in that country. But the fact of the matter is that they are adjacent to Roblox. Thus, Roblox does see um, a lot of the revenue that those companies, those proxy companies, have. So it's a way for them to kind of bypass the law in those countries and still exist while it not being necessarily Roblox itself existing. So it's kind of muddy waters. It's kind of, kind of skeptical. I'm a little bit skeptical on how that works. It feels like they're avoiding the law, but it seems to have worked in those countries, and they have their own versions going for those countries. So that'd be China and Vietnam, at least that I know of, have their own version. We might see other countries in the future start to implement the same thing and stating that Roblox has to create a specific version of Roblox or start a new company in that country to make a specific version of Roblox for that country, making sure that it follows the laws and the policies that that country is stating. Regardless, once again, this issue is not just happening in other countries. It might not be banned in the US, but there are a lot of lawsuits and investigations going on Roblox for the same reason in a couple of different states. Those states being Kentucky, Louisiana, Florida, and Oklahoma. as they are currently doing investigations on how Roblox is attempting and whether they are successfully implementing measures to increase the safety of children in their platform. Because the fact of the matter is that a lot of kids play Roblox. And not only do a lot of kids play Roblox, Roblox main target audience is children. Meaning that if your target audience is children, you have to be able to cater to ensure children's safety. And the CEO went and started talking about the different efforts that they've made as they've been receiving so much backlash. And the CEO stated a couple of different things. Amongst them, one of the things he states is that Roblox is really good for kids to learn STEM values. And although yes, that's not necessarily incorrect because anybody can program in Roblox and learn the fundamentals of programming through it. You can learn a couple of things from STEM. It doesn't change the fact that although they're trying to say it's a good influence, it might not be, because it doesn't address the major issue, which is the fact that since Roblox is a sandbox, and as a sandbox, it gives people the liberty to be able to be creative and create whatever they want. They could make things that are not, they're not apt for kids. Now, the CEO did try to combat this and say, well, actually, we have a bunch of policies that are against kids sharing private information. You cannot share images in Roblox. So there's a lot of things that we're doing to ensure that it's for kids. And first things first, policies. Kids don't give a about policies. Okay, kids don't care about policies at all. They don't read that. They don't care. They're just gonna keep doing whatever they can in the game, even if it doesn't follow their said policies. Second, even if you were to try to ask those policies, review every single thing that's created in the game to make sure it adheres to that policy, the fact of the matter is that there are hundreds of thousands, there's 100,000 like content being created, different types of content being created in Roblox almost daily, right? So it'd be really hard, borderline impossible, to actually be able to review every single submission, every single creation that any individual user posts on the platform and not let anything, slip through the cracks, right? Because sure, they do have some filters in place, and that's one of the things that the CEO mentioned is all the filters they have in place to make sure that everything is kid friendly, but you can bypass those filters pretty easily. For example, map creation. There's a couple of maps in Roblox, and one of the maps that got it in this mess in the first place was a map that was just a strip club where kids were playing as their characters in the strip club, and you have people dancing in the strip club and doing things there that as kids they should not be exposed to. And even if it's not as crazy as a strip club, there are some maps that have some casinos in it. Now, it may not be real money, but the fact of the matter is that they're being exposed at an early age to gambling and everything that gambling entails. And that's not good. These are all things that we restrict as adults and in the real world for a reason, and we don't allow kids to partake in it. And these things are very hard for you to really catch and avoid kids from partaking in. Second, or third, or I don't even know, I've lost count at this point. The CEO also mentioned that they are focusing on having safety for kids against predators, because that's the main issue, or the main worry that parents have, is regarding all the predators that are claimed to be existing in the platform. Now, the CEO went and said that the problem is not their game, it's not Roblox, it's actually all the other applications and games that the kids have on their devices. They're basically stating that, oh, people are not being, coerced in the game. People are being coerced outside of the game. Let's say YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, whatever it is, any type of other social media. They're saying they're being coerced over there and then being brought to Roblox in order to do like them be exploited, which is just not true. The fact of the matter is that even though you have policies so that people can't say their private information, you have voice chat, meaning that through voice chat, you can just coerce a kid to give you those other apps, like your Discord, give you your Facebook, give you all of this information to them, and then they can use that to make you a potential target. So once again, another reason why this is becoming an issue. Like you say you're doing stuff, and they've said the PR speak that I've heard so many times recently, which is our top priority is your children's security and protecting your children. Well, that's kind of bull nowadays. You know who else said that their top priority was protecting the security of their individuals? Twitch. And we saw what happened recently on TwitchCon. And I'm not going to open that can of worms because that's content creation, not necessarily related to video games. But the fact of the matter is that we've been seeing so many fuck ups in recent months and recent years, and they always state the same thing. Our people's security is our top priority, right? Like, we all know that this is just all talk, right? Legal talk or whatever you want to call it. But the reality is your main objective is to make money, not to keep people protected, right? So you will do what a lot of companies do, which is kind of shove it under the rug until it becomes a problem. And now it's blowing up in Roblox's face, where they have to make a lot of changes to their platform and adhere to a lot of things and seeing the consequences because they were shoving it under the rug for so long. Now, it's not easy, right? Once again, when you have the possibility of creating anything as a sandbox game, then anything can and will be created. And it doesn't matter how many filters you put in. You could have a dildo sword, right? And just call it a sword of something. And in reality, it's just a dildo in the game, right? And that's not good, right? You don't want kids exposed to that kind of stuff. Kids being exposed to adult content doesn't just stop in pornography. It goes on to gambling. It goes on to violence. It goes on to so many different things. And if you can't regulate or be more strict with what is and is not created in your platform, then people will consider you a not safe space for children. In fact, another thing that they claimed is that they're using AI to use the face cam of your phone to detect the age of whoever's using and playing the game. And this is supposed to be a really revolutionary thing that they are saying that proves that we are keeping your children, safe. Well, the reality is, first off, I don't like the idea of AI and then using my camera to scan it and all that kind of stuff. That's something that a lot of people and a lot of parents would not be very happy about. Second, Roblox is played by all ages. So what are you going to do? Ban somebody if they look above 21 or something and they're in the game? Are you just going to ban them? Second, if it's a kid, you are kind of, you're scanning a kid's face, right, to determine their age. But you can play Roblox in other places that's not your phone. You play Roblox on your PC, and not everybody has a webcam. You can play Roblox on your different consoles, and not all consoles have a webcam, especially since we no longer have the Kinect like we used to. Even Switch, like we don't have a lot of these consoles that like cameras on consoles. So how would you be able to determine then, right? Kids are too easily exposed to problems, and the solution is not something they want to hear. The solution to Roblox being able to actually become kid friendly is to become similar to that of what web phishing is. So web phishing is it had a mechanic where you couldn't text words, right? You couldn't voice chat. What you could do in that game was use pre-made like words and talk through there, similar to how at some point in the beginning Penguin Club Penguin had that in the beginning, and then they added chatting features. But overall, that's how you prevent it. Don't allow older and potential predators being able to communicate directly to the kids. How will they be able to communicate? Easy. Discord. And as long as you're in your Discord with your own friends, you won't be joining a random person's Discord, because the reality is that if you can't communicate and you can't just say, hey, add me on Discord, I'm this friend, I'm this person, you, by restricting the way people can interact and talk to each other, you and restricting voice chat altogether, you ensure that kids are not able to interact negatively or in an unsafe way with a stranger that they do not know. If they have to use their own voice chat apps, in other words, Discord, to talk to their friends, then it ensures that you're first playing with your friends, and it also ensures that you can play whatever game you want to play in Roblox. Now, that once again, this only solves the problem, the potential problem of a predator or somebody trying to make somebody that wants to do harm to your children. It still doesn't change the fact that it doesn't restrict a lot of the things that kids could be exposed to in the app. And we haven't even talked about how the many mini games and game modes that are created in Roblox are done in such a way that they are predatory to get as much money from your kids, right? So they just go take your mom and dad's credit card and then buy something in their Roblox game. And doing this, it also incentivizes your kid and puts them in a bad state where they're just wasting money or maybe even gambling their money in something that they wouldn't have otherwise if things weren't as predatory for them to spend their money. So clearly, there's a lot of changes that Roblox has to do if they want to stay kid friendly. Because if it weren't targeted towards kids, we wouldn't be seeing these problems. Gmod is a sandbox game, and Gmod doesn't get as much flack because Gmod is not meant for kids. It's not targeted towards kids. So if you do find kids playing Gmod, that can be arranged in the sense that they have the safety net that it's like that's not their target audience, right? But Roblox's audience is children. So as long as you're going to do that, you have to be as strict and honestly as good as how Nintendo does their PR, because Nintendo, a lot of their games are for kids and they're very explicit on that fact, meaning that you barely ever see Mario or Sonic or even you barely ever see Zelda saying the word fuck. You don't see it saying any slur. You don't see it murdering anything. We're not gonna consider jumping on turtles to be murder. So you don't see them doing graphic adult stuff in their games. And in fact, they sue people and they file claims against people who make drawings or make a content with their characters doing stuff that is not good for kids to view. And that's what Roblox has to do. But and accept that they will lose money by being that strict, and they might even lose some of their target audience. And that being that fact that although they do cater for kids, they do want some adults to be playing the game. So as long as you have that, you just can't cater for kids. You either stop saying it's a kids game or you start restricting it like a kids game. PETA Games says otherwise. Yep. Regardless, that's currently the state of Roblox. It seems like they're also a rock and a hard place where they have to make some really heavy decisions if they want to actually be able to win the lawsuits that they're seeing against all these states. And if they lose, you might be seeing Roblox itself being banned in the US as well. Not only this, but Roblox has been fighting, stating that they are a US company. They're stating, we're innovating on the economy. We're fully US. We innovate on AI here in America. We innovate on gaming industry here in America. But that doesn't change the fact that the problem is not how you are doing as a company. The problem is that you are not doing enough to keep children safe as a game targeted towards children. And VPNs are a thing. You're completely right. VPNs are a thing, so people can still access these games. So it's a hard line to cross, and we'll see how they react and how they're able to kind of save their own butt regarding whether they're gonna get either sued, banned in the US, or banned in even more countries. Now, with Roblox out of the way, we also have some controversial updates in policies that YouTube has been pushing out. So they recently made a policy change that should be taking effect sometime in November. I think it's like November 15, 16, sometime around then. And this new policy starts being very much restrictive and being way more, I guess, hankering down on video games, specifically video game violence and gambling. So with their new with their new policy change, what they say they're going to start checking is what they consider graphic content, gaming content. Within this, they consider graphic gaming content anything that be, for example, gambling. If you're using a casino, if you're showing videos of roulette, if you're showing videos of you playing slots or you gambling your money, all of this was already restricted, but it's going to be a little bit more restricted nowadays. But not only that, they're now extending that to video games, sources of like potential gambling. What do I mean by that? Remember how Counter-Strike currently has their skin economy? Well, YouTube is now making it so that anything that could be exchanged for money or has any monetary value in game that you can get could also be considered adult content. So once again, CSGO, with all the content of them doing loot boxes openings and then selling those weapon skins and all that kind of stuff, that will now be restricted by YouTube, and it won't be taken down. It'll just get restricted to 18 and up, right? Now, they're also going to be doing harder checks on video game violence, seeing as whether the violence includes, I think I have it somewhere around here, whether the violence includes realistic human characters, right? So if you see a realistic human character or you see a depiction of somebody, innocent person, right, an innocent civilian getting attacked or being suffering on screen, and they look human-like, those things are now going to be flagged by YouTube and thus going to be restricted to a 18 and up audience, which is terrible because that means that games like GTA 6 are going to be affected. Games like Call of Duty or even horror games that we love to see online might be getting restricted as well. So who knows how something like Resident Evil is gonna do on YouTube. Overall, just we don't know how strict they're gonna be, and they're gonna be taking a bunch of different things into account. They say here that they're gonna be taking into account duration. How long is that violence happening on screen? They're also taking it in the prominence, which is just how close, how noticeable does it take the entire screen? That violence takes the entire screen. Like, is it super graphic? That kind of stuff is also going to be taken into account. That's another game that will be affected by this is Mortal Kombat. Now, this changes matter, right? Why does it matter so much? Well, the reality is that in the gaming industry, the games that succeed and do really well are those that can be made content of and thus can be promoted online. More people learn about it. And as long as it's in your feed, you're more likely to engage with that game, right? One of the many reasons that people stated that Mortal Kombat 1 did not succeed was because they couldn't make content about it. And since people couldn't post content of Mortal Kombat, then content creators were incentivized to not post content online, thus killing its community. And if you kill the community, you kind of diminish the potential success of any franchise. So we might be seeing something similar happening to GTA 6 in the future once it's released. But this also changes what type of games are made. For example, one of the biggest things and genres that exist in the horror franchise, in the horror genre, is the mascot horror. One of the reasons that mascot horror became such a huge thing and you saw it online everywhere you went, and why Five Nights at Freddy's became so popular, is because since YouTube was being very strict on their what they consider graphic content, you couldn't play graphic horror games. You couldn't play horror games like Dead Space. You couldn't play horror games like some Silent Hill games. You couldn't play horror games like some Resident Evil games. You couldn't play these games and post content about them online because YouTube would just restrict it. And thus, what could you play? Well, you could play an animatronic giving you a jump scare and killing you, but no violence was being shown on screen. And later on in the franchise, any violence that you would see on screen would be to robots, right? So on YouTube's eyes, that was perfectly fine. So we finally had a horror genre game that people could make content of online. Thus, when Five Nights at Freddy's came out, that's why it blew up and why we had so many Five Nights at Freddy's clones. And why now the mascot horror is such a huge thing. Because other than blood and other than you, the character being human, most of the time you don't see any other human characters in the game. You just see whatever mascot horror is in the game. So this shows how much strength YouTube has on the gaming industry and how these policies can change the industry as a whole, because it determines what type of games become popular and what type of games will be made in the future. So where is this going to lead us? What's going to be the next equivalent of the mascot horror or the next equivalent of GTA? We don't know. And we'll see how strict they are going to be once November 16th rolls out. But if you are a content creator that makes any type of content regarding GTA, violence, Call of Duty, anything along those lines, maybe even zombie games, just know that your videos might be striked in the future. And you should start thinking what type of content you would want to shift towards in order to ensure you can continue making content as time goes on. So that is very unfortunate. We should be seeing a lot more games, maybe like Repo, or the Backrooms. Those games don't show any blood, are still horror games, and they don't depict violence. They just, are scary. So we might see a surge, an even greater surge than we already have in those type of games. Speaking of Repo did recently, I don't have a picture for this one, but Repo did recently take out their update. And Repo has been trying, I think it's called the Monsters update. They've been trying to add even more they try to add even more, I guess, scary elements to the game, trying to make the game a little bit more scary. So they made the monsters look a little bit more creepy. They also lowered the lighting in the game and try to make it the ambience of the game that much more scary. So they're trying to rehaul the game to make it not just fun to play, but also scary and giving that, I guess, Lethal Company ish vibe to it. So that's an update that just came out today that if you like Repo, you should definitely check it out. I know that I'll be checking it out in the future. But with all that said, with all these changes, with everything being on fire, that is all for this week in the news regarding the gaming industry. So if you don't want to lose, if you want to miss out on any more news in the future and you want to stay up to date on anything that's coming out, please make sure to subscribe or to follow me on Twitch so you don't ever miss any news. I go live every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, where I then talk and recap all the news related to the gaming industry that has happened that week. So I'll see you then. And that concludes basically the YouTube portion of the thing. But yeah, what do you guys think? Once again, there's been a lot of changes, and it kind of sucks because there's a lot of changes that I fear for the industry, but I also am one that believes that restriction allows for innovation, right? So like we saw with the mascot horror, the creation of the mascot horror franchise, that came around a lot because of the restriction of not being able to make bloody and graphic horror games. But there's there being a market of people who want to play horror games and want to stream horror games. So that's why that started. Who knows what other type of new genre we'll see in the future. And if you want to play those type of, if you want to watch or play those type of like adult games or graphic games, then right now it seems like the places you would be able to do it is here on Twitch or on Kick. Right? I don't feel like you'd be able to do it on TikTok either. I think TikTok would also be pretty restrictive in the way they present their what games you can play. So with that said, it's there's a lot of room for potential innovation, but also a lot of room for a lot of games to be restricted and not get as much attention or as much love as they deserve. Not gonna lie, there will be probably be future games that have a toggleable blood setting. Actually, that's also possible. Similar to how nowadays a lot of games implement the what is it, like DMCA setting where like the music in games get changed to non-copyright music. They could do the same thing and like lower the I guess lower the horror meter, like blood meter or stuff like that, violence meter. I think it would be something like that. But this doesn't just apply for horror games. Like you have games like what was it? It's that one game that's like it's a, I forgot the name of it, but it's basically a story-based game where like your decisions matter and you go through a story. You make a bunch of decisions. Depending on the decisions you make, you branch out and stuff like that. I forgot the name of which one it was, but in one of those games there was one scene where they basically put a screwdriver up somebody's face, and that had to be completely changed or censored for some people because some countries, not just like YouTube, like some countries considered it like aggressive violence, and thus it got banned, or in YouTube it got strike, and they had to like basically change the scene, or content creators would just have to blur the scene altogether. Or maybe change the blood color to something like Danganronpa's pink, or they can do what they do in anime, which is that semen white, baby, the semen white blood, which we all love. Yeah, the white blood is infamous in anime. It's terrible. It's what they did with Seven Deadly Sins. They massacred my boy. But yeah, no, you're completely right. This is why a lot of games have recently you can see a lot of like games that depict something equivalent to blood, but they depict it in, like, for example, they depict it in black goo, right? So if you look at Bendy and the Ink Factory, the black goo is supposed to be their blood, right? So that's also one way they worked around showing blood or representing blood in the game. But that one is also a mascot horror. Or you might do what they did in there's a new show from Dana Terrace. If I think I made the name right. I think I said it right. Dana Terrace, which is the new it's the guards of the Knights of something, Guinevere. Knights of Guinevere. I think I got it. Knights of Guinevere. Well, the blood, even though there's normal humans and they have blood, normal blood, there also is a lot of elements of using blue blood in the show, which allows them to be able to present the game or the show in this case to a more varied audience. But yeah, people will find workarounds. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. It's just a matter of how restrictive will YouTube be? How will game developers cater to these things? And also, what type of changes will we see? Because you mentioned right now, you mentioned Indo, right? You mentioned how Indominus might struggle in the future. That's not wrong, in the sense that, for example, we played that one, what was it, Night Shift, where we were playing and then you could shoot somebody and then they would just blow up into a bunch of body parts and blood. That would not go well. Right now it's fine on YouTube, but I wouldn't be surprised if his content gets not strike, because they said they weren't going to strike their content, but they did say that it might get flagged or be restricted in the future because that's considered too gory or too violent to be showing on screen. So there's options and there are options, right? We'll see what falls on in and what falls out of YouTube's restrictions. So yeah, big stuff. Once again, a lot of stuff is happening. A lot of things are changing, for the better or for the worse. I feel like right now more than ever, indie games are growing and becoming way more popular than that of AAA games, and people are getting tired of AAA. I didn't cover it on today's news, but there was the company that made Peak, right? They've stated themselves that they're not looking for the increase in like creep and infinite increase on their company. They're just gonna be overall they're just gonna be doing whatever they can and whatever they consider to be a fun game, and then they've realized that if you do that, the money will come, right? The same thing happens with the release of what was it? There was another company that was working on a game with okay, so I remember now. The Multiverses, the company that made Multiverses, they took out a statement saying that for their next game, they don't want to be involved with AAA whatsoever, right? They're just going to be indie, and they don't want to get involved with AAA anymore because they say that they don't like that culture. And it makes sense if they're working on multiverses. I wouldn't be surprised if they were being pressured by their publisher to do some actions or to prioritize some things that they didn't really want to prioritize at the time. Um, I feel I'm a little bit worried with games like DBD, but I think DBD will be fine. Dead by Daylight, mostly because Dead by Daylight uh could just not show blood. They show blood splurts, but they might change it to something else. Um, but it does fall under the new guidelines where you're hurting somebody who's innocent, right? The whole point is that the killer is hurting survivors that can't really fend for themselves. So it technically falls under the new stricter guidelines. So I hope that DBD uh still performs well and doesn't end up unfortunately getting scrapped, especially all those DBD creators. I hope that their content doesn't end up being all restricted. It would suck for those type of content creators to have that. So we're gonna be seeing a lot of changes. A lot of countries are being more strict with what is shown and what isn't shown. We're starting to move into a more uh conservative uh, world where we're looking at countries being way more restrictive of things. There's good parts and there's bad parts. One of the things they're being restrictive on is on the implementation and continuous implementation of loot boxes in some countries, which is why, like I mentioned last week, why Valve is changing how their Counter Strike stuff works. It's all slowly turning into 1984. No, go further. It's all turning into the Great Depression. That's what everything is turning back into. Just you missed a couple years, a couple decades, but you're getting the idea. Um, but yeah, we're moving back um to be way more restricting and way more conservative in a lot of ways. And it's also we always see this narrative come every so often, but it's also the narrative of oh, video games cause violence, right? Which I don't agree with. I don't believe that video game causes violence, but the fact of the matter is that a lot of people do, and that's still an argument that every so often gets shown, even though it's been proven that that's not the case. It turns up every so often with new games, and we might see restrictions similar to uh when the what is it called, the rating system in the US originally got created. The rating system, that rating system was very strict when it first implemented, and what was considered non-rated, what was considered R, or like, sorry, what was it considered rated M for mature and all that kind of stuff. Nowadays, we don't really. It's not as strict as it used to be, and we don't really follow those ratings. But we might start. It might start being a lot more strict regarding those ratings going forward. Keep in mind, most of the censorship started back up because of collective shout, more like collective mute. Yeah. Yep. It's they I mean, it's the same reason why in China they have their own version of Roblox. The reason they had banned it originally was because of anti-communist propaganda that was being portrayed in Roblox. So people like world politics is also involved here. There are some topics or some things that they don't want some what is the word? There are some depictions they don't want shown on media, right? You can see that with movies as well. There are certain movies that don't go that well, don't do that well, and it's because they don't like the depictions of like anti or antagonist, not antagonist is anarchistic uh, uh all right, anarchistic views that a lot of like dystopian movies, for example, showed. They don't want to show stuff in movies that are like revolution right now. They want to prevent showing those because they don't want people to have revolution in their minds. Um, so yeah, the world politics affects video games. It's world politics, world economy. All these things affect how, what, and when we make games, and how we and what communities and how we interact with video games. It's very interesting. It's fun to read about. It's fun. It's interesting to read about how um video games are a relatively new thing, as in like there are video games came out, in like 1980s, 1990s. um like it's more than, it's not a century old, right? It's younger than a century. Video games, meaning that uh we are seeing the same patterns for video games that we saw for example, how book restrictions are, right? How people restrict how book sales and what gets published and what doesn't get published in certain countries. This is it's just another medium of storytelling that is going through the exact same censorship cycle, I guess, that you could call it like that, that every other medium went at some point. The same thing happened with movies when movies started. So it's nothing new. These things have been happening from the beginning of time, and they will continue to happen because um, when you portray something that is against my values, or that when you portray something that I don't like because it's mean to me, I'm not gonna let you have it. I'm gonna ban it and I'm gonna censor it. You can't have that. It's mean to me. Which is why we gotta celebrate whenever there's creators that, even with these reactions, go against the mold and say, no, this needs to exist, right? We might criticize, you might or might not like South Park, but South Park is actually one of those it's actually one of those shows that is not scared to criticize what's happening in the world, right? And because they're not scared and they don't hold any punches, a lot of people have come to uh enjoy, not just enjoy, like highly value it as a show, as more and more shows decide to censor themselves, so that way um we don't aren't able to do express ourselves, right? um in video games, one of the reasons, once again, Sims, I had mentioned previously with Sims, how let me put it up. I had mentioned previously with Sims how people were not happy about how it got restricted, and how it had different values than that of what the community holds. Well, an example of that is that already, one of the things that they wanted change for Sims was the fact that they didn't want you to woohoo before marriage. They didn't want you to woohoo unless and you couldn't woohoo of the same sex, right? And if you play Sims, you know what I mean by woohoo. Um, but yeah, they were restricting how you could play the game, in the sense that it didn't align with their views. And we all know that, like, um Iran, Iraq, and all these countries have a more conservative view of of these type of things, right? Even like LGBTQ, they're very conservative in those sense. So they don't want that to be portrayed in media, or in this case in video games. And this a bunch of people that play Sims are from the LGBTQ community, and them being restricted like this, it hurts. It sucks for them, honestly. And you don't want to be restricted in that way, and you don't want the people who have very conservative views to be controlling what gets made in media, what gets made in video games, what gets made in um, music, and everything, right? Because people's voices are to be heard, and we want uh, all communities should have a space where they can um, partake in. So it sucks that if EA gets acquired, most EA games will be a lot more conservative in a lot of ways. um whether that be like not showing women in the military, right? Or women as in specific roles and stories and stuff like that, right? There's so many ways that this acquisition will change the mindset and will change the way people will make games. EA specifically will make games. Yeah, kind of sucks. Next thing you know, South Park has to censor itself. That'll be the day. If South Park ends up censoring itself, I'd be worried. I'd be very worried. Specifically here in the United States, if South Park starts having to actually censor itself and is not able to, regardless of what you agree on with them or not, if they're made to actually censor themselves, it would be a huge loss in America and the supposed uh the country of the free, right? So it's a scary thing to think about because if South Park is getting censored, believe me, you and Twitch won't be able to do much. In fact, that's one of the complaints that people have right now with TikTok. And TikTok, that new they implemented that completely new uh for the United States, like a new I guess censorship or like um what do you call it? A a new, yeah, I think it's censorship. Yeah, like a new moderating team to TikTok here in the US um to ensure that bad content and bad views and all that kind of stuff is not propagated on the channel, on the application. Well, a lot of what they don't want to be publicated in in the application is people spreading their opinions regarding how bad the economy is right now or how bad certain individuals in government are running things. So we're seeing a lot of censorship in every aspect of society. So we'll see how this affects us going further in the future. But yeah, all right. So with that said, I'm not gonna be checking any like actual game reviews, like game scores today, gem scores, mostly because as I mentioned, I am a little bit sick, which is also why I had to uh leave in the middle of the news segment. So I apologize about that. And there's also why I've had a little bit of insomnia. So I've been a little bit sick recently. So I'm gonna call it early today. I'm not sure if I might have to cancel tomorrow's stream uh regarding playing Caught the Wire. I might have to cancel it because I had not realized that it was Halloween. When I made the schedule, I had not realized that it was Halloween day. And I have plans for Halloween, so I might have to cancel the that stream on Halloween. But yeah, overall, um that's gonna be it for today, guys. It's a short stream, but there was a lot of news to cover today. I hope that you learned a lot, that you understand what's going on with the industry. I try to, even if I'm a little bit sick, I try to be able to come in every single Thursday to give you guys the news because I feel like this is really important. Not many people. I don't think in Twitch there's that many people who are basically game news. I know that in YouTube there's a lot of people like that, but I don't think there's any people in Twitch that cover gaming news live. Um, which is something I wanna do more, and hopefully in the future I'll be able to like I'm doing with you, Sans. I'll be able to talk to more people as we look at news, and maybe the people will have some news they want to see me react on the fly regarding gaming industry. So, or maybe some videos so I could react to in the future. So definitely something I want to keep fostering, and I want to make sure that I'm always keeping you guys up to date and become a reliable source for news in the gaming industry. But regardless, I'm gonna cut it here today. and I will see you guys. If not tomorrow, I'll see you guys sometime next week. And when I have the schedule for that, I'll post it. So I'll see you guys then. Also, do you like Has Been Hotel? Since I tagged you in the Has Been Hotel post with a shirt, I thought it was funny enough to tag you in it. I didn't get to see it. I haven't seen it yet. I saw you tagged me on it, but I haven't been able to see it yet. And I do like Has Been Hotel. I really like it. I heard that the second season is coming out, or it came out already. I've seen like a lot of clips like about like songs from the new season. So if it hasn't come out, I'm waiting for it to come out to see it, to watch it. I've watched the original Has Been Hotel. I've watched all of Hello Boss. I really enjoy that IP. So definitely I enjoy that show. So yeah. Well, with that said, I'll leave you to it, and I will catch you guys in the next update of the gaming marketplace. See you then. Bye.